Jennifer Pills, and I'm a board member of the Africa Hub, and it means a lot to see this many people out. We've been working hard for that. The program was a partnership between the Division of Applied Social Sciences in Kaffner and the Bond Life Science Center's Life and Science Society program. We would like to thank today's sponsors, the MU Office of Research and Kaffner International Programs, directed by Dr. Carrie Clark. CIP provides capacity building and development assistance for global partners and facilitates global engagement for MU students and faculty. I would like to introduce Chuka Emezue. He's a PhD student in the Sinclair School of Nursing, and he's going to introduce our first speaker today. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. Our first speaker today is Edwin Lee Bonney. Edwin is a doctoral student in ELPA, which is the Education Leadership and Policy Analysis here at the University of Missouri. His research includes recognizing and highlighting the languages, cultures, and experiences of minoritized groups as a way to disrupt hegemonic English language practices and policies, especially in Ghanaian education. Edwin is currently a researcher as part of the U.S. Department of Education National Professional Development Grant in Missouri. Specifically, he's with the Strengthening Equity and Effectiveness for Teachers of English program. His presentation today is titled, What Our Books Tell Us About Our Language and Culture, Literature in Ghanaian Classrooms. Please give Edwin a warm welcome.
And so, today I want to share with you a part of research that I've been digging into, examining, partly because of my own background and experience in Ghana, in the educational system. And so I'm looking at a lot of the faces here, and I doubt I don't know if there's anybody from Ghana. And so then, what you might even take away from this is what you found that you've read in schools, and whether in the US, wherever you've been, from elementary all the way to high school, and how you saw yourself in the books that you read. Whether the books you read had people that look like you. So that's part of what I'm going to examine in this presentation. So before we jump into it, I should tell you that from a country where, like many other countries in Africa, they are. So in Ghana, for instance, we have about, the estimate now is 68 languages that are spoken. Take our population is 26 million. So 68 languages, 26 million people, so those numbers. And then when you consider what people at here call dialects and variations of languages, that number of 68 comes to around 250. And so there are different variety. Or call them dialects, but then know that with every dialect comes with its own culture, its own way of being in those settings. And so then what we know right now in Ghana about Ghanaian languages is that students prefer to speak, read, and write in English than in their own languages. They want to do that because that's the national language, and that's the language of social mobility. You need to know that to go up in society. So if educators would normally consider somebody illiterate if they don't know how to read, speak, and write in English. Even if they know how to do those things in Ghanaian languages, they still consider them illiterate. And so then you realize that Ghanaian languages, the discourse about them is there's not enough value that is placed on them in the educational setting. And both parents and educators and students, community members think that Ghanaian languages shouldn't be a focus of study in school. Why are we wasting our time studying the languages if there's no value in them? But interestingly, research has found the opposite, that if you give students instruction in Ghanaian languages, they understand concepts better. They are better able to express themselves even in Ghanaian languages and in English as well. They are surprisingly able to write in English better if they receive enough instruction in Ghanaian languages, which I find even that more interesting, that students who are given Ghanaian language instruction for just 9 months, they perform better in English, right? Compared to students who are not given instruction and intense instruction in Ghanaian languages. And so students with languages practice that included a Ghanaian language, they did better overall in school. But then, if you look back at the discourse, Ghanaian languages are not valued. But then you look in education and Ghanaian languages are needed if students are to perform better. So this is where my career comes in, that if we look at the literature that students read, that it's important, research tells us that it's important that the books we read, they affirm who we are, the language we speak, our identities in the book. If we read literature that talks about the histories of other people, more so than our histories or our own identities, we tend to want to become what we read. And so then if it's less literature that tells them about themselves, it says a lot about what students aspire to become, or what they aspire to do. And all of these things sort of build up the discourse that English language or English identities are very important because of the literature that students read. Because the children's book mirror correlations in society. It tells you about what are the dominant ideologies, what are mainstream ideologies in society, and how to counter that if you learn. And so that it's very important that the language that is used to write literature, whether be it English, be it Ghanaian languages, they circulate like a dominant idea of what society should look like. And so then thinking back to my own experience in Ghanaian education, I realized that, so thinking about this, so this was about 3 years ago, looking at some of the books that I've read way back in high school. Say way back like it's a long time ago. It hasn't been a long time ago. I hope so. But the books I read didn't say a lot about Ghana. It didn't say a lot about Ghanaian languages. It didn't say a lot about Ghanaian culture. The people I was reading, the stories that were being told and that we're reading about in the literature that was required for us, all the characters seem to speak in English. Almost all the characters spoke in English. Very few spoke in Ghanaian languages. If they did, it was sort of sprinkled throughout the text. And so then, this examination is years down the line after I finished high school. What has changed? Are students reading more books that talk about themselves? And so there are two main ideas that inform my thinking about this. The idea of language hegemony, that if a population that with a very, very, very different view of the world, different culture, manages to infuse their ways of being, their values, their beliefs into another culture such that it subordinates the culture that is being infused. Then Velez Ibanez will tell you that the language hegemony is underway. And a lot of this happens during colonization. Right? You have a different population coming in, and they tell you their ways of being are superior. They are the ways of civilization and progress. So you have to copy those things. And the second idea is master narratives. So master narratives are, they are like normalized ideas that the colonial master's language and their belief system, their rituals, their way of speaking, being, and doing is superior, like talked about, is civilized than the colonized. And so these things, similar to what they call the hidden curriculum. So they are not official, they are not written in the curriculum. Students are not being told this, but the way in which the structure of schooling is set up, that's what students come to believe. It's sort of, students are trained into seeing that. And so the discourse about Ghanaian languages that said in schools that says that Ghanaian languages have no value, it's because for a long time, that's what we've seen. from colonization all the way down till now. So students receive messages that reinforce the values that dominant language is what is important and yours isn't. And so these two ideas sort of frame the idea for my inquiry, the examination that I did. And so the main two questions, which I've sort of touched on, but laid out, is how are Ghanaian languages and their speakers represented in the curriculum? Represented in the books that we are required to read in the curriculum. So you can think about that in whatever setting you've been, whether it's in the US, wherever, the Philippines, Indonesia. Like, how are the books, the languages that you speak, represented in the books that you're supposed to read? And the same thing, how are Ghanaian cultural practices also represented in the books that you're supposed to read, comparing them to English or Western practices in Ghanaian language. And then the final thing is, what are the master narratives or hidden curriculum in these books that we are required to read? What are the books telling us? And so then, to do this, I go back to when I was in high school, all the way till now. And I found that the 12 books have been required for all students to read at the high school level. But out of the 12 books, only 5 are written by Ghanaian authors. It's like, wow, that's encouraging. So the rest of the other, so there's 7 are written by, so there are books like Julius Caesar, books that are written by non-Ghanaians, if you will, or non-Africans. So like, okay, I'm going to exclude the books that are not written by Ghanaians, and just see what are these books, the remaining books, telling us about Ghanaian cultures, because they're written by Ghanaians. Hopefully they do say something positive about Ghanaian languages and cultures. So if you want to sort of follow the analysis on this, you can just use this link to get a whole breakdown of what the analysis was. So there are 2 codes formed by the theory that went into this, that an English language hegemony and master narrative. So any narrative that position the English language, ways of being and speaking and doing, above Ghanaian languages, or subordinated them in a way. Those were things that I was looking for in the books that I read. So the method that has been used, especially in examination of literature, some call it a critical content analysis. Don't want to go into that, but is basically looking through each and every book, each and every line of the book, and see how many times a Ghanaian language appears, who is speaking the Ghanaian language, how is the Ghanaian language written, the formats in which it's written, how are Ghanaian languages talked about, how is the culture talked about, how are characters who only speak Ghanaian languages and then English talked about those who don't speak a Ghanaian language, how are they portrayed in the literature. And so a lot of this, applying this method to all the books, and then so the caveat is that I exclude any reference to Ghanaian names and places in my analysis. Because if you start counting Ghanaian names in the analysis, you get plenty. Because the Ghanaian names are many and will obscure the real use of Ghanaian languages. If I start counting the names, there will definitely be more in each of the books. So I excluded that just to see how is the Ghanaian language being used in a real way. So I shared findings based on language. There were findings based on culture, but I don't think I have enough time to go into that. So I'll talk about language. And see what the 4 main things I found. That there are scarcity of Ghanaian languages. The format of Ghanaian languages are very different in the way they are presented. There's also a limited range of it. I'll talk more about that. And inauthentic Ghanaian ways of speaking. And remember that these books are written by Ghanaian authors. So scarcity of it. I know if you like tables, you find this. If you don't, you'll be like, oh, wow. Okay. So running through it. So these are the books, and if you open up the link I told you, so you'll find all of that. So these are all the books that I read. This is the No Sweetness Here and Other Stories is the only one that has 11 stories. All the rest are just one story. And so counting. So for instance, if you take a book like No Sweetness Here and Other Stories, the total number of words in the Ghanaian language is 275. Now, if you exclude words, names, and places, you only have 87, which is fine. But the concept, if you take any book, a fiction book, so a book like No Sweetness Here is like a 5x8 book. It has 134 words. So on average, you have 250 words on a page. Times 134, you have like 33,500 words. Now the real use of Ghanaian languages is 87, which says a lot about what Ghanaian language is representing. Like what really are the languages talking about? So there are 81 characters in all the books who use 176 words in the Ghanaian languages. Now, among these 81 characters, you can say that each character speaks 2 words in the Ghanaian language, just 2 words. And if you think about that, so 2 words do 116 pages to 15 stories, which is not representative of how Ghanaians speak. Ghanaians speak more, even in our local language, than in English. So 2 words doesn't say a lot. And then there are only 2 characters who don't primarily speak English, sort of standard English. They say that they speak Pidgin English, which is a mixture of Ghanaian languages and English. But these characters are portrayed as like the low class in society, and then they are cast as, one of them is called the monster of whichever town he's from, which says a lot. So in all the books also, there's only one Ghanaian language that's represented, and there's only one Ghanaian language that appears in all the books. And these are books written by authors that are representative of a lot of the cultures that a lot of the language groups in Ghana. So only one Ghanaian language says a lot. So Ghanaian languages, I have a few minutes more, so Ghanaian languages are formatted very differently. Most of the time, the languages are written in italics or they're in bold. And that alone is fine, especially if it's different. But if a student who's reading about Ghana and reading about his own culture finds that all the time his language is in italics or bold, it says that, and then usually authors will explain what the words mean, so even to a Ghanaian audience. To a student, it would read as if you want to use a Ghanaian language, you always have to translate what you want to say in English. Right, and so then it's better to save on time and just use English. You don't waste time using a Ghanaian language. And you find that all throughout the book. So it sort of others Ghanaian languages as very different. And Ghanaian languages are, so the limited range is that the groups of words, they're only position titles and names. Songs, places, greetings, food, clothing, those are the words that I found that are in Ghanaian languages. And so you find examples like, so just name, prayers and chants, there's places, greetings, and a type of clothing, there's sikra and apampa. So then there's no real use. Ghanaian languages are not being used to engage in active communication. They just talk about cultural artifacts or cultural products. And there are also inauthentic ways in which Ghanaian languages are represented. So this example, from him at the time. Raising his God and looking up, he said, Supreme God of Saturday, do you think you drink not, but receive your presence? Mother Earth of Thursday, drink. He bowed and poured a drop of gin on the ground. So this is an example of what I call in unnecessary translation. Now this word, Supreme God of Saturday, is the name of a god called Tradium Ponkwame. And then Mother Earth of Thursday is Sasasea. Like there was in the book, there's no need to translate this. It's like translating it, you anglicizes the identity of the god. So there's no need to translate this, but the authors do that, like, leaning more towards English language practices. So the things I continue to learn, this is the last thing and I'll be done, that when we read literature like this that reinforces that Ghanaian languages are good, but they are good for names, places, things, songs, cultural artifacts, but not as a way to engage with the world or a way to interact with people, and even in long sentences. It shows that there's no value in it. They also reinforce a master narrative that to be educated means to speak English, embody English ways of speaking, doing, and being, and to do these things less in Ghanaian languages. You don't need to speak Ghanaian languages if you're educated. Those are like some of the things that I'm learning from these analysis. And that what we read, it constructs ideas about society, about our own identities, and our ideologies about Ghanaian language, and the culture implied by them. You need to see yourself in the books you read so that you can aspire to those things. Thank you.
Language, hegemony, and master narrative, two things I did not know about before coming here, and I hope this has helped us in thinking about the way we read, write, and speak in academia. We're going to take a few questions now, say about 3 questions for Edwin, so who's willing to go first?
How many of the 68 languages do you speak in a typical language?
So,
Repeat the question.
so she was, so I'll amplify it. So she's asking how many languages do I speak out of the 68, or does a typical Ghanaian speak? And I don't know the statistics on that, but then from my own experience, Ghanaians I speak about 2 Ghanaian languages. I myself speak about 2, and a third one not so well. So yeah, that answers your question.
If we have another question.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. That was interesting. I have 2 questions. So, first one, you mentioned how when people write about the language, they explain what it means. But I guess not everyone speaks the same languages. So does it not make sense to explain something you introduce to an audience of students who are from different languages? And second question, when you select those books, did you actually see what the purpose of the book was? Because you have different type of books. Some tell stories, some talk mathematics and other things. Did you see whether there is difference using different types of books?
No. So I guess I'll answer your second question first. That yes, I looked at what the purpose of the books were for. And that's in another paper. It talked about the goals of literature in the classroom and what it's used for. And most of the times, these books are used to teach literary terms and devices. So if you remember, so like oxymorons, synecdoche, all these things. But then, in teaching those things, students don't get a chance to examine what really the stories are telling them. And so that's part of that's part of why this is hidden, right? Students are reading these books. They are asked to look out for literary terms and apply those terms, but then they don't get to examine these things. And so then it normalizes their experience when they're reading these books. That, every Ghanaian should learn how to speak English, should learn not to speak so much of Ghanaian languages if they want to move high in society. Right, and what that happens is it reduces the importance of it. And eventually we'll have a society, hopefully we don't, but we have a society where almost everybody's English speaking and very few people are speaking Ghanaian languages. And then to answer the first question about the way it's written, I agree that we like writing words like that, you need to explain it. But then the way in which the words are written, it says that they are not regular. So if you pick a book like any book, the font is regular, there's no bold, there's no italic. But every time you see a Ghanaian word, then you see either it's bold or italics. It makes it look different. And then students spend a lot of time interrogating what does the word even mean? And sometimes the meaning of the word doesn't necessarily add much to the context of what you're reading. And so that's why I argue it's okay to explain what the words mean, but at least with the way it's presented. It could be presented as a regular font, like the way every other thing is, but it's not. It makes it look different. Like it pinpoints it. And that's my opinion that yes. Sorry, yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. You said you have many languages in Ghana.
And I'm wondering if there is a superior language that,
Like a national language.
yeah, that is being even taught in school maybe, or student or people, look forward to learn that language because it's more superior than other small language.
Right.
And my second question is, what really inspired you to do such a study?
It was the second one. So I talked about the fact that I was thinking about my own, the things I read in school, and I realized I didn't see a lot of my own, like people who look like me in the books I read in a Ghanaian school setting. And so that's why I wanted to go back and see like what has changed, if it has changed. I was hoping it has changed, but it hasn't changed. And so that's what made me go into it. And well, in Ghana, of course, in every context, there's like a language that is spoken by a large population of the citizens. And so in Ghana, we have about 9 that are like more dominant languages that are spoken by a large population. But even in schools, those languages are not highlighted. They are not important in school. So we teach them as a subject, but that's it. And sometimes we want to teach you the language so that you can acquire English fast, and we forget about your language, right? And so even though that there's the idea of superior, and you shouldn't like to think about it in those terms.
Sorry.
Talk more.
Okay, it's just a follow-up question. So what's the national language, like beside English? Is there any other like local language that is spoken in the office? And just a follow-up that, so there's number of, like if I understood you clearly, there are number of languages that are taught in school, like the local languages, not only one.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So there is, but there's no national language. The national language is English.
Oh,